Hello everyone. It's been really long that I read stories. Many different things kept me preoccupied, but how can I forget today's special importance? Today is Satyajit Ray's birthday. Who need no introduction? Satyajit Ray, a genius par excellence. And he quite effortlessly touched every creative art, leaving behind his classy touch. Be it story, music, painting, movies, advertisement, and so many more. So today I have selected one translation of his story. One of the most beloved characters created by the master storyteller was Professor Shonku, a genius scientist and inventor of eccentric gadgets working from his laboratory in Giridih. So this story's name is Professor Shonku's Date with History. In this story, Shonku and two of his German colleagues invent a Computium, a device to communicate with the souls of the departed. What follows are some surprising results that celebrate the spirit of human imagination and scientific invention. So let's get started. 12th September. What a delightful day. After 1.5 years of relentless hard work, we have finally finished all our work on our device. Though the entire idea was mine, I am using the word we because by no means could I have accomplished this task on my own. My Giridih laboratory cannot provide the necessary material to build this machine. Therefore, right at the initial stage, I had written a letter to my German friend Wilhelm Kroll, who in turn wrote to the well-known Psychic Research Institute in Munich, Germany. Thanks to Kroll's recommendation, we received a grant in financial aid from the institute, and it became possible for 2 Germans and 1 Indian scientist to create this machine in Munich. The second German is a young fellow, one Rudolf Heen. He has an insatiable curiosity about spiritualism. Now let me say a few words about the machine we invented. We have called it Computium, that is, computerized medium. Those who connect with departed souls in a seance often take the help of a medium, an individual through whom the spirit communicates with this world with ease. Spiritualism or spiritual mediums possess a special quality. I have come in contact with many mediums in my country and have studied them carefully. There is something special about them. They are sensitive, sharp, emotional, and always preoccupied or absorbed. They often suffer from indispositions, and many die young. Before we completed this machine, both Kroll in Europe and I in India studied the characteristics and behavior of at least 350 mediums in detail. One sole mission was to set up a mechanical and artificial medium to establish contact with the spirit world in place of real live medium. Thanks to the generous endowment from the Psychic Research Institute, there was no stopping us in our quest. The results our Computium has yielded so far confirms that our joint effort is nothing but a grand success. The machine need not have resembled a human, but we decided to give it the shape of a body and add a head to it. We have also added a pair of legs to make it stand. The equipment is a meter in height. We have created a slit on top of the head to insert the name and details about the spirit one is going to call upon. This equipment will be placed on one of the room, and the people taking part in the seance will be seated about 2 meters away facing the machine. After inserting the card in the machine, the lights are switched off. In this pitch dark, a red light fixed in the machine's chest will gradually come on, indicating that the spirit has arrived. Now we start asking questions and the answers begin to emerge from the mouth of the machine. When the spirit begins to feel tired, the red light will gradually fade out and the seance session will come to an end. The three of us have tried out our tests on the machine. Adolf Hitler's spirit was caught. Within a minute of inserting information about him, the red light glowed. I asked him in German, "Are you Adolf Hitler?" The reply was Ja, which means yes in German. Kroll asked a second question. "Don't you have any regret or remorse for torturing and killing the Jews so ruthlessly during your lifetime?" Immediately a shrill voice came out in the form of a reply from the machine. "Nein, nein, nein." That is, no, no, no. This encounter went on for about 5 minutes. This experiment proved two things. One, that it worked, and two, that it was clear that Hitler's opinion of himself had not changed even in death. We will take a break for 2 days and then resume our work on the machine. Hein's aspirations are very high. He thinks if we can further fine-tune the machine, we can even see the image of the spirit. In other words, the spirits will appear before us in person. That would be very useful. An added bonus, my latest invention has already reached a state which is definitely quite unprecedented in the history of science. Now we need to select a few scientists and invite them over for a demonstration of this machine. So far, the news of the invention is yet to reach the public. At Kroll's request, I'll stay back in Munich for another month. 15th September. With the help of this machine, we were able to connect to 2 more spirits of well-known personalities. One is Indian Nawab Sirajuddaulah, which was chiefly to satisfy my own curiosity. I checked with Siraj about the Andhukop murder, Black Hole of Calcutta, in 1756. With a lilt in his voice, Siraj said he knew nothing about this and that the British had spearheaded his horrible campaign only to malign him. Spirits do not lie. Hence, in my mind at least, in his honor, and his honor was restored with ease. The second spirit was that of Shakespeare. My question to him was, there are some who are of the opinion that judging by the standard of your education and your modest family background, it doesn't seem plausible that you penned these plays and poems. Many people are of the view that the real writer is Francis Bacon. What's your opinion on this? To start with, the spirit of Shakespeare, after hearing my question, let out a hearty laugh. He then recited a charming 4-line poem on people's lack of faith and respect and asked me, "Do you know what the name of Bacon means in my language?" I said, "What?" "Bacon means country bumpkin. Go and check any dictionary. You will find this meaning. And this country bumpkin is supposed to have created my plays? Have people lost their minds?" During these last 2 sessions, only 3 of us were present. Last evening, we invited 11 scientists. We gave them a demonstration of the machine. Kroll had forewarned me about the presence of few scientists who don't believe in a spirit world. He mentioned Professor Schultz in particular. Even as a person, Schultz doesn't have much of a reputation, though he is heading a physics-based organization. When its former director, Professor Huberman, suddenly died 3 years ago, Schultz was offered this position. I said, a few skeptics who will be difficult to convince doesn't bother me. We'll carry on with our demonstration irrespective of Schultz. Hein said the best way to convince them would be to call upon Huberman's spirit. All present are familiar with his style of speaking. If our machine adopts that similar style, it will be easy to convince them. We agreed to this suggestion. Everything was arranged in a hall of the Psychic Research Institute. The séance was fixed for 7 p.m. Everyone arrived on time. Before settling down in a chair in front row, Schultz said, "I would like to see the machine first." Kroll said, "Gladly." Schulz scrutinized the machine in great detail for 5 minutes. He then returned to his own chair and quipped, "It's fine. The farce now can begin." Kroll announced that to begin with we would try to establish contact with Professor Huberman. I had assumed Schulz would raise some objection to this, but he remained quiet. The others present agreed to their suggestion. After putting the required information into the machine through the slit in the head, Kroll switched off the light and occupied his seat next to me. Each one in the room was watchful and quiet. Even the sound of the 14 scientists' breathing could not be heard. After 2 minutes, the light started shining. In the radiance of the light, but partially reflected on the people, all of us could be easily identified. But the area behind the machine was completely dark. "Are you Professor Huberman?" inquired Kroll. A voice responded, "Yes, but why have I been called? This fake world holds no value for me." "Why do you say so?" The answer was, "What's the point of a world where even the most brutal murderer gets away from the law?" I noticed the guest scientist staring with excitement. Schulz roared, "What's all this rubbish? Kroll, I am convinced that you are speaking on behalf of Huberman. You are adept at ventriloquism." That Kroll knows ventriloquism is something I too was aware of, but there was no doubt that this voice was indeed emerging from the machine. Kroll's mouth was shut. It's simply not possible to voice without opening one's mouth. Meanwhile, words once more started coming out of the machine. I was the director of a physics-based organization. To grab my position, Johannes Schulz mixed potassium cyanide in my coffee. For the sheer lack of evidence, he went scot-free. What can I be worse than this? Suddenly, there came the sound of smashing glass and the light went off. My eyes were on Professor Schulz. I had seen him take out a pipe from his pocket and hit the light of the machine with it to smash the bulb. With the fading of the light, the words from the spirit died out too. Kroll got up and switched on the lights. All our eyes were on Schulz. It was obvious that he had nerves of steel. He pointed to Kroll and said coldly, "On the basis of today's incident, I can call for a defamation case against you, projecting the machine as an excuse to prove I am the assassin. What audacity!" He strode out of the room, leaving behind his pipe. Of course, of those who remained, only one, a physicist, Professor Ehrlich, commented in an intense voice, "Today, Huberman's spirit has confirmed most of our reservations. The machine is incomparable." 28th September. The majority of the tabloids are against us. Disgusted with the breed of journalists, I have been contemplating returning home. However, he appeared suddenly this morning and declared jubilantly that he had succeeded in his mission at last. The spirit had started appearing in person next to the machine. This left me speechless. When Kroll was informed, he said, "We need to check on this right away." "What have you tested?" "How could I make this up?" jibed he. "I have just now spoken to my namesake, the 18th century poet Heinrich Heine. I can even describe in detail the dress he wore." We instantly sat down to the study machine. Within 10 minutes, we saw the world-famous German composer Beethoven, clad in a black suit, pacing up and down right in front of us. Before we could shoot a question at him, Beethoven lamented, "Oh God, my deafness will be the end of me. How could you destroy my hearing ability?" I remember Beethoven had turned deaf since his middle age. We were of course thrilled with Heine's achievement. My inner self tells me perhaps one can now alter the rigid mindset of the journalists and prove the uniqueness of this machine. We decided that with the Institute's help, we could call for another meeting inviting all journalists, particularly the ones who had criticized our efforts. This time we would use the bigger lecture hall of the Institute and place the machine right in the middle of the platform. With this in mind, we sent out all our invitations. We also invited Schulz. He phoned me after receiving the card. He said, "So what new charade have you planned this time?" I remarked, "Why don't you witness everything with your own eyes? All I can say is that this time it will be not just an oral experience but a visual one too." Schulz laughed and retorted, "But then who doesn't enjoy watching such magic? And if one can divulge your tricks publicly, what can be nicer?" I calmly said, "Even if this be your ultimate aim, do come, please." "Let's see," said Schulz. I have a feeling that Schulz can't help but come. In all, we invited 700 people. The hall can accommodate 800. The meeting is scheduled for 3rd October. 4th October, 12:30 a.m. It makes me shudder again and again every time I think of the last evening's affair. There is no doubt that we were victorious all the way. After the meeting, despite the climax, no one could refrain from clapping. The Computium did full justice to our efforts. All the invitees had come who wants to let go of an opportunity of watching a spectacle free of cost. Before the meeting, Kroll gave an introductory speech to explain our mission. Judging by history, no one had easily accepted any of the revolutionary scientific discoveries. Starting with telegraph, telephone, television to nuclear explosion, men landing on the moon, sending satellite into space, people have nursed their reservations about every innovation. We too would have faced a similar reaction, and what was about to be demonstrated would now perhaps instill faith in people's mind concerning our machine. That is what we hoped for. It was decided that Heen himself would insert the information inside the slit of the machine and would not disclose the identity of the spirit to anyone, not even to the two of us. It would be a complete surprise. Kroll and I agreed to this scheme. Though he is young, Heen is a very promising scientist and he has the ability to think on his feet. An ability which is always valuable, especially during this kind of experiment. After Kroll finished his speech and sat down, Heen stood up and welcomed everyone present in the audience. He said, "We have informed you all that we will call upon a spirit with the help of a Computium. All I want to say is that I'll not reveal beforehand whose spirit will appear now. When the spirit arrives, you can see it with your own eyes." Heen took out a card from his pocket and inserted it inside the head of the machine. He then indicated to one of his workers to put out the lights. I don't normally get nervous or restless, but for some reason I felt my heart skipping a bit or two. Whose spirit would appear at Heen's call? Nothing for 5 minutes. Pitch dark room. All the windows were draped in black curtains. Someone controlled his cough. Silence once more. I could feel everyone waiting with bated breath. My attention was fixed towards the middle of the platform. Hey ho! I thought I could perhaps spot a red dot. Yes, no mistake. A red light glowed from the machine's heart. Does that mean? I suddenly heard a sound in the silent hall. The sound of a storm. No, not a storm. The flying pair of wings of a bird. There is the bird. Is it a bird? The one flying across the entire hall? What is it? I finally comprehended we could see the bird because of the shining phosphorus of its body. A cross between a bat and a reptile. This being emerged from the middle of the room and was circling across the hall, while producing a cry through his mouth wide open, baring his pair of fangs. Pterodactyl! This fanged and ferocious creature had existed on this earth 15 million years ago. Heen had put in this description in the card. This creature's eyes were sparkling green, the very symbol of aggression. On top of this, the light emanating from the body added an even more dangerous edge to the vision. There was much chaos in the hall, sheer terror. Drowning all noise, Heen shouted into the mic, "Are you convinced now?" The response echoed in unison across the hall. "Oh yes, please remove this being right away." Heen must have switched off the machine's light. The other lights came on in the hall. Amongst the present audience, 7 had fainted in their fright. A black-suited man in front row had even fallen down from the chair. When I went close to the figure, I realized it was Professor Schultz. Holding his wrist and checking on his pulse, Kroll blurted out abruptly, "He is no more." Against this backdrop of death and incessant clapping, "Hail Computium! Hail science!"